From here, and good morning. Today we're talking about arguing. So this is something we've all done, because I know you all well enough. So that so basically, when is arguing worth it? When is it not? And I'd like to talk about a couple wonderful Bible verses where people actually argue, one with God and one with Jesus, and win the argument. So when is it worth it to argue? When is it helpful to argue? And when is it best just not to bother? Good to see you all this morning, and of course, got some wonderful stuff to talk about. So let's start out. I got a new song of the month here. So, go ahead, feel free to jump. He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got the wind and the rain in his hands. He's got the wind and the rain in his hands. He's got the wind and the rain in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the itty bitty baby in his hands. He's got the itty bitty baby in his hands. He's got the itty bitty baby in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. Got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. All right, let me get my stuff here and sit down and have a little chat with y'all. Things coming up. Prayers for our group. We talked a little bit about before, but let's, Patty, we're keeping you in our prayers because,
I need all the help I can get.
fair enough. But, for obviously, actually we're really happy though about the new doctor situation, taking your insurance, treating you well, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
I'm thrilled with that, and, just giving you prayers as, and from what I heard, right, please tell me if I'm wrong, that, you got a doctoring situation set up in Eau Claire, but they're actually not doing the knee surgery right away. They're
No,
gonna.
I go back in 2 months and they're going to take more x-rays and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with my knee except I got arthritis.
Okay.
So the meniscus and everything is fine. So
Nice.
he said we'll try to put it off, and then he wanted to put gel shot and all that stuff in my knee. And I said, no, you're not shooting my knee. They said they had cortisone shots in Winona, and I said that lasted for about 2 days, and that was it. So.
Okay. Any other prayers we want to lift up as a group this morning? Easy enough. All right.
I want prayer for these flies because I want a fly swatter.
I understand. We'll pray for your patience with flies, but it is the season, you know.
Well, there are ways to get rid of them.
Yeah, it could, but you know, do we really want Dave walking around the whole surface with a fly swatter? I mean, this is the thing we
Well, at least
debate
it's
about.
not a gun.
It is.
What's they say?
She said, at least it's not a gun. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I guess in the big picture, it's
Are you insinuating that that's what Rusty would do, is shoot them?
Well, what are they good for? What are flies good for?
in the big picture. What are flies good for? I never really gave this much thought.
Spreading germs.
They help decomposing tissue and
Yeah.
break it down.
There you go. So when you die, they eat you.
The larvae do.
Thanks for that piece of trivia there,
That's-
Cassie. I
Why, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Well, I have a concern about COVID and
Okay.
how it's still spreading, and it's still spreading around here.
Mm-hmm.
And we know of a couple whose 2 children have it now.
Mm.
And
Are they really sick?
no, but
Yeah,
it's,
daycare.
At daycare they got it?
yeah, and
That's disgusting.
I know, we just need to, I think, keep in mind that people are suffering from it still.
Yes. And I do know of people that have already started getting boosters.
Well, they are already?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely keep our prayer. I mean, certainly at a time when we thought, this thing, we were over the hump, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
It came back, and so let's, in general, prayers for those who are continuing to suffer with this, something that just seems to keep going.
Isn't there another new variants coming out too?
There's a number of them. It's a matter of how there's a number of variants. It's a matter of how wide they get and how much they'll get our attention as a result. Yeah. Any other prayer we want to lift up this morning? Let's keep Cassie's dad in our prayers. He is in the hospital in Pomme de Terre, Missouri, and just still in critical condition. Seems to be responding well to antibiotics, but still, it's keep in our prayers. That's really. Anything else you want to say about that, Cassie?
Yep.
Yeah.
People, the disasters
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hurricanes.
Got really hit this week with the.
New York and
Yeah.
New Jersey.
School just started up and there's been school shooting already.
Alright, well in that case, let's pray. Oh God, we come to you this morning, we thank you for the beautiful day and the chance to be with one another. We ask that you be with all those who suffer, from those who still battle the COVID virus, to those who have dealt with horrible hurricane damage, and to all of those who hurt. Dear God, reach out with your love and care and help us in our own way to reach out in love so that they truly are not alone. I'd like to lift up Cassie's dad in our prayers today as he battles. Please be with him and his family this time. In Jesus' name, we lift up these and so many more of our heartfelt prayers to you. Amen. Thanks, gang. All right. I got another movie clip on odd questions for the internet today. Today's theme is all about arguing. When do people argue? When do we change our minds as a result of what others tell us? And the movie clip I'm showing you today is from one of my favorite movies of all time. I watch this movie every year between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's a movie called Nobody's Fool. It stars not Robert Redford, the other one, Paul Newman, and Jessica Tandy. And so the scene you're going to see is at the very end of the movie. And it is a discussion between Jessica Tandy, who plays an old lady in town, and Paul Newman plays a guy named Sully, who really is the main character in this whole story. And the whole movie is about change, whether people change their minds. And it's very interesting because the whole movie, you realize that Paul Newman's character, Sully, has really changed a lot, but the whole time he stubbornly insists that he never changes. And in the last scene, he kind of affirms it, which is funny because he's changed so much, but he can never admit that he's changed. Let's take a look at it.
What happened to the? It was working earlier.
The little subtle face in there is really great. In other words, and throughout the movie was a discussion of whether people change, whether they change their mind. At the very end, just like, you sure I can't interest you in a cup of tea? Well, she's trying to convince it. And of course, not now, not ever. Other people change their mind. And that look on his face, Jesus Christ, is like, me? Change my mind? Never. And yet he does in the course of the movie, which makes the movie brilliant. He just can never admit it. And today I want to talk about that. In what circumstances do we change our minds? To what extent does an argument work? To what extent can you change someone else's mind? And to what extent should you not even try? So, cool. All right, what's next here? I'm gonna have you guys join me in this song. Some of you know this real well. It's a great tune. I've done this in jug band, but I also just really like it, period. So feel free to join in with me, and I'll slow it down so it's kind of a sing-along pace. That's better. That's got you, though. There you go. Alright, come on, grip. There it is. There. Oh, they tell me of a home far beyond the sky, and they tell me of a home far away. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an uncloudy gate. Oh, the land of cloudless days. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded gate. Oh, they tell me of a home where my friends have gone. They tell me of that land far away, where the tree of life in eternal bloom sheds its fragrance on the unclouded day. Oh, the land of a cloudless days. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me that he smiles on his children there, and his smile drives their sorrows away. And they tell me that no tears ever come again in that lovely land of unclouded day. Oh, the land of cloudless days. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Nice going, excellent, excellent. Hey, you two over there, how you doing? Great to see you. Matter of fact, before when we start, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind.
We've got an active COVID case in the house, and even though we're vaccinated, we're trying to stay away.
All right. In that case, I'll just yell at you over there for your opinion once in a while, because
That's
today
fine.
we're talking about arguing. So, I love this topic, and I know we all have something to say on the topic. So we're gonna hear about this. Good deal. All right. Excellent. Then let's talk about forgiving past mistakes. We remind ourselves every week of the need to remind ourselves about forgiveness and the need to forgive others. And I learn more and more as I sort of contemplate and take some interesting courses in the world of psychology and therapy. The need to forgive oneself and move on is extremely important as well. Our Bible reminds us over and over again in so many ways that God has reached out in forgiveness and love to us. In the Old Testament, it was a constant reminder from God about forgiveness, and in the New Testament, Jesus stands as the reminder of God's loving forgiveness that will stop at nothing to get closer and to give us new starts. There's a wonderful quote here. Forgiveness is a sign that the person who has wronged you means more to you than the wrong they have dealt. Sometimes Christian will say, love the sinner, but hate the sin. And, or the other way around, really hate the sin, but love the sinner. And it's very important. Let's pray. Oh God, we come to you this morning and we reach out in our hearts for the strength to forgive. The strength to forgive when those have hurt us, the strength to love when those have hated us. Help us to realize that we have been forgiven. And please, oh God, give us the strength to reach out in forgiving love to others. And let's continue our prayers in silence. Brothers and sisters, hear the good news of the book of Isaiah. It was for my own good that I had such hard times, but your love protected me from doom in the deep pit, and you turned your eyes away from my sins. Let us go living new life, knowing that we have been forgiven, and that we can forgive others. I think I can make it now, the pain is gone. All of those bad feelings have disappeared. Here's the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Amen. All right. And together as children of God, let us pray the prayer that Jesus taught to us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread,
And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
All right. I got two Bible stories for you today, and in both cases, people are debating, arguing, one with God and one with Jesus. And in this case, it worked. So I want to talk to you about each one. And again, the question in the back of our minds while we look at these stories is ultimately, when in our lives is it a good idea to argue? And when is it a good idea just to kind of be quiet? And when is it helpful and all that good stuff? When do we argue? When is it beneficial to us? Things like that. I want to talk about this. So the first story comes from the book of Exodus. Now set the scene in your head. Moses, he has led the people out of slavery in Egypt and went across the land. But then he goes up to the top of Mount Sinai. Right, and it's at this point where the Ten Commandments are created and things of this. But while this is going on, for those of you who know the Bible story, while the people down below at the bottom of the mountain grow impatient that Moses has been up there too long, they decide to create another god to worship. The famous story of the golden calf. So they make this golden calf that they can bow down and worship. That gold was actually brought from all of their possessions. And so, now while up there, God becomes aware of what's going down below, and he tells Moses about this. This interchange between the two of them, though, is fascinating, and one we don't always think that much about. So, it goes like this, in the book of Exodus. And the Lord said to Moses, "Hurry back down. Those people you've led out of Egypt are acting like fools. They've already stopped obeying me, and have made themselves an idol in the shape of a young bull. And they have bowed down to it, offered sacrifices, and said that it is the God who brought them out of Egypt. Moses, I have seen how stubborn these people are, and I am angry enough to destroy them. And now don't try to stop me, but I will make your descendants into a great nation." And Moses tried to get the Lord God to change his mind. "O Lord, you used your mighty power to bring these people out of Egypt. Don't become angry and destroy them now. If you do, the Egyptians will say that you brought your people out here to the mountains just to get rid of them. Please, don't be angry with your people. Don't destroy them. Remember the solemn promise you made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You promised them that someday they would have as many descendants as there are stars in the sky, and that you would give them land." So even though the Lord had threatened to destroy the people, he changed his mind, and he let them live. One of two stories kind of chucked back in our head there. We'll be talking about it later. If I put my glasses over here, remind me where I put them. I'll put them down places and wander around, and then I'll lose them and I can't see anything. So keep that story in the back of your mind. We will be discussing it. And again, when is it good to argue? Quick song I'd like to share with you. I like this one. And if you happen to know it, feel free to sing along or whatever. I kind of like this one. That a little more. Gonna lay down my sword and shield. shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Gonna study war no more, and I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, and I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside. Gonna study war no more, and I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, and I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Gonna walk with Prince of Peace down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna walk with Prince of Peace down by the riverside. Gonna study war no more, and I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, and I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. No, I ain't gonna study war no more. A second occurrence in the Bible where someone actually argues with Jesus is found actually in a couple different books. I happen to pick the one from the book of Matthew. It'll read like this. Jesus left and went to the territory by the cities of Tyre and Sidon, and suddenly a Canaanite woman from there came out shouting, "Lord and Son of David, have pity on me. My daughter is full of demons." But Jesus did not say a word, but the woman kept following along and shouting to his disciples, came up and asked her to send her away. And Jesus said, "I was sent only to the people of Israel. They are like a flock of lost sheep." The woman came closer. She knelt down and begged, "Please help me, Lord." And Jesus replied, "It isn't right to take food away from the children and feed it to the dogs." "Lord, that's true," the woman said, "but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the owner's table." And Jesus answered, "Dear woman, you really do have a lot of faith, and you will be given what you want." At that moment, her daughter was healed.
That looks like my house all week.
Good, then I have an expert in the field. Today's question, when to argue and when not to argue. Now to begin this, I'll simply talk about the two moments in the Bible that are seem sort of surprising. After all, who dares argue with God? Well, Moses did at one point. God was extremely angry with his people when they made the golden calf. And at one moment, it's an interesting thing when you read, in the moment, God is like, "I've had enough of these folks. I have led them through all sorts of stuff. I have cared for them, and they do this to me. I'm getting rid of them." And Moses like, no, don't do that. And he even puts out reasons. He's got reasons for his argument. For goodness sakes, people will say that you let them all out of Egypt just to leave them here in the desert. But what's most important about this is God actually changes his mind. In the story with Jesus and the woman who is not Jewish, Jesus originally said, "Look, I was sent to the people of Israel. I was sent to the Jews. Why are these other people coming to me?" And he even says something which is fairly derogatory. "I'm not going to take the food that is meant for the children children of Israel by metaphor, and throw it to the dogs. And then she says, in a very clever argument, the dogs eat food that falls from the table. Jesus is so impressed with her words that he says, you know what, you're right. And you've been made well. So today I want to talk to you about when does it work to argue and when is it best not to. And again, today's scripture lesson are two surprising moments in the Bible where you don't think someone's going to argue with God, but Moses did. You don't think someone's going to argue with Jesus and win, but this non-Jewish woman does. So, I'm going to sit down and have chat. I can sit here, but I want to glance over at you guys here and stuff like this. I'll kind of see if I can make myself comfortable over here. But gang, where to begin? Has there ever been a moment when you've been surprised that you've won an argument? Where the other person actually said, you know what, you're right. I was really surprised in the Bible story that the woman sort of argues against Jesus and Jesus says, you know something, you're right. Have you ever been surprised that you have won a discussion or someone really saw your side of the story when you didn't think they would?
All the time.
Oh, tell me again. Nice. Who sees your way of thinking?
Sometimes he does.
Okay, fair enough. By the way, I'm just going to take a very quick second. We did prayers before you got here, but how are you feeling? How are things going with the leg and all that?
Well, I did the injection Friday, and so far, I mean, they said it would take 10 days. So
Yeah. All right. So you're waiting for the injection to have a positive
Yeah.
effect. Well, we'll definitely keep you in our prayers.
Thank you.
I just was curious, and when I say, well, I got to ask you before I
Yeah.
forget. So.
Yeah,
But-
thank you.
all right. So sometimes you make a case to Richard, and he thinks about it. Wow, you're right. So this happens.
Yeah, it does.
No, it's excellent. It's good.
I'm usually shocked.
But this is, and it can be, because honestly, we live in a world where people develop opinions and can be very rigid and firm about them. So it can be wonderful and refreshing. So let's play with that. When has someone kind of thought about what you said and actually changed their minds? Patty, has this ever happened to you, or does your entire world dig their heels in it every moment?
It happens, but it doesn't happen right away. Usually it's about a week later when he finds out that what he did wasn't right, and I was right, so.
Now, I'm kind of curious, because I find there's one of two reactions when people are wrong like this. Some can admit, they'll tell you, oh, I'm so sorry, I was wrong about that, and others just kind of pretend that they never had that opinion to begin with. Which of the two do you
He pretends he doesn't have that opinion.
Okay, no, I've worked with people like that too, where we can argue and then eventually they'll agree with me,
But working with your husband,
yes, please, yes.
now I know why we didn't have the body shop while I quit there.
Mm-hmm.
Because he just, all of a sudden he gets this wild hair up his hind end that, right now we're gonna do this. Well, when I go to bed at 2 o'clock and at 3 o'clock he's waking me up for something, it's just, he has to go gung-ho. When he gets going, he's going. But we got all the cupboards down, we got the fan laid up, we got the window in, he put the curtains up at 2 o'clock this morning. Today he's working at Elmer's with my...
Patty gets a day of rest.
You know, I got a lot of stuff to do, but it's just
A peaceful day.
I don't know what it's going to be, if I'm going to do something, or if I'm going to just go to bed and stay in bed all day, or wash clothes, or do something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's just, this week has just been,
The idea of working with your spouse is very interesting. I know, and what I do now when I, because I work with Nondenominational, but there's a number of other stores that are essentially husband and wife teams. Because it can be a sort of a two-person operation, and so for some of these places, they're a husband and wife store, and I joked with Cassie, and I'm like, oh, honey, we can, when these stores open up, and we can work together and that all day. And she gave me that look.
Like, are you nuts?
Yes, as if to say, I would rather jump off a cliff than do that. So I just wanted to check on that.
I'm married to you, I love you, I live with you, but I don't want to move with you.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes, exactly. When is it? And you dovetail that to the first question. I'm not quite done with it about when when have you won the argument? But when is it really beneficial to argue, to make your case and argue? When is it really helpful? Under what circumstances is it really helpful to make an argument? To say, look, I understand where you're coming from. It doesn't have to be a spouse, it could be anybody.
Well, if it's cold in your house and you start arguing, then the house heats up.
Okay, I was imagining many arguments, but the fact that it would save on fuel is not one of them. Okay, Cassie, Patty does this in the winter. When is it beneficial to really argue, to make your case? You got two examples in the Bible, people who really have.
I think when there's hidden facts that maybe one person knows and the other doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you're sitting, you're figuring your finances out, and you know something's coming up because you've just found out about it, but the other person doesn't, and wants to know why we're not doing it this way. And there's just hidden things, and this is going to be the consequence. When there's consequences in the future for that one person may be considering, the other person hasn't quite shed the light on, I think that's real beneficial, because then you're able to make a more informed decision even together. Even if it's not completely the same decision, at least it's a little more informed and on the right path.
So, if you have information the other person doesn't have, in other words, maybe that new information, yeah, good idea, I like that.
I think most circumstances, you don't mean to argue, it just turns into an argument. Maybe you disagree with somebody, but you all of a sudden, when the other person will say, all you want to do is argue. Well, you're not really, that's not the purpose, you're just expressing your point of your feelings, or you want to do something, or do it a different way or something. It's not where you don't want to argue with them, you just want to help them to do it a better way or whatever, and it just turns into an argument. It ends up that way.
Oh, so sometimes it just starts out as I have a different view on the whole thing,
Yeah.
but then it turns into more of an argument.
Yeah.
Huh.
You gotta define your terms.
I think I agree. Are we talking about arguing or disagreeing, and is there? Yeah.
I think the second example that you gave where with Jesus was a plea more than an argument, just a strong plea where the woman just couldn't lose because the consequences were too great.
Okay. So in other words, she's arguing with Jesus, but maybe not. In other words, it's just a more of a please than an argument.
Yeah.
Even though it ends up kind of sounding like a different. It's more of a one of those not taking no for an answer sort of things. Maybe?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
A lot of times, Nina will give me credit if I come up with a different idea or something instead of arguing and say, well, that was a good point, that you made there, she will comment me, telling me that that was good thinking.
Oh, so okay, you get, sometimes you were right and get, yeah. I'm kind of curious over here. I didn't know where I'm going with this. So, does your significant other ever tell you, that, you know what, Mary Lou, you were right. That was a good argument you made. That was a good plea. That was a good thing you said. I agree with you now.
No.
Fair enough. So it absolutely never happens.
Oh, I can't remember it happening.
Fair enough. So I'm just kind of curious then. If, let's just say, you guys have a disagreement of opinion about what to do with something, and it becomes very obvious that you were right on that, how does he respond to that?
He just does it the way I said, and then he doesn't say nothing.
No, yeah, it's a common, you kind of ignore it ever happening sort of thing. It is a nice way to save face and do the right thing in that particular case. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's other times that he had, okay, for the bananas, I said, how well do you know me? And he goes, you're going to get bananas.
Yes.
Well, no, and that's in the second category of when is it beneficial maybe not to argue at all. And at that point, it seems like that your husband's argument was, look, I know who you are. I know what's going to happen in this situation.
Yes.
I may have a different opinion or whatever, but there is no point.
No, because he's not gonna change my mind.
Okay, that's.
But when I'm right, I really know I'm right. And I actually have heard somebody else that was arguing with me said, don't bother, you're not gonna win. Because when it comes to knowing stuff about the past and things like that, she remembers everything. And she will get it right. You will be wrong.
So let's flip it on this. As long as you've gone down that territory a little bit, when is it better just not to bother arguing? Under what circumstances?
I think it's better to walk away if there's any anger type emotions.
So if it's building a certain
Right,
chill level,
if
yeah.
it's getting to a point where it's gonna be harmful to one person or the other,
Uh-huh.
then it's time to stop and regroup and bring it up maybe later,
Yeah.
you know? But I think that would be important when you start getting very angry and the emotions start rising. Yeah, it's time to walk away from the table.
Okay.
You say things that you don't really mean.
Right.
Is there a point where it gets there where the argument is no longer worth what you're arguing over?
Yep.
Okay.
Sometimes you don't even remember what you were arguing about in the first place when it gets to that point.
Fair enough.
When the outcome doesn't really matter to you.
Yeah.
You may be right about something, but the outcome doesn't really matter to you all that much. You might as well just let it go.
So if I'm hearing you right, in other words, you're sort of guessing the outcome and now thinking it's not worth the battle to get.
Yeah, it's not worth the battle.
Yeah.
I think a great one like this is kids. You know, when you talk to kids. Kids are constantly arguing with you.
Okay.
You know, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Why can't I have this? Why does so-and-so get this? You know, and I mean, you try to do it and at some point it's just like, because I said so, done. You know?
I love that phrase because I said, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of us as kids would swear when I get older I'll never say something as stupid as that, and you always end up saying that at some point. I don't have kids and I've said that to kids who just argued with me at church and because I said so. Because at some point you do get tired of reasons and debate and argument and just like.
And a lot of times when they argue, the thing could hurt them.
Oh.
And that's when you get to that point, it's, as I said though, because there's nothing else that's gonna get in there.
It's gonna get. Fair enough.
They're not gonna listen. And they do argue about things that would hurt them.
Okay. Betty, I'm kind of curious. You raised 2 children. Did you? What things do you? Because I know both of your children well, and I know there's a certain stubbornness that goes through the Harm family. So I can imagine some debates happening in the Harm household with various of your kids growing up. And so I'm kind of curious. At what point did you discuss with them why such and such, your opinion, was the best one, and to what extent is it, I'm not going to debate and this is it?
Well, I guess I never, if I heard them screaming or yelling and that stuff, I didn't really look at it that way. But when they were quiet, then all hell broke loose.
Okay, that's the other way around, isn't it?
Well, yeah, any parent knows.
It's too quiet?
If it's quiet, there's something going on.
One day the kids were told to clean up their room. And they were yelling and all that stuff, and all of a sudden it got really, really quiet. And here's Sean taking magic marker and writing on Shannon, and Shannon doing the same thing. And that was on a Saturday, and I taught Sunday school at St. John. So they went to Sunday school with magic marker all over them, face and everything.
Okay.
I took them to church. And then Sean goes, when he's older now with Rylan, he goes, now remember, what Dad did when Grandma told him not to, you do it what Grandma says, because you'll end up in bad trouble. But there are other moments where, you know, they just gotta learn the hard way. They gotta fall down, and they gotta get back up again.
So, yeah, are there points that you don't argue? And I was gonna head over to Janine in here, but are there points that with kids that you just don't argue to a point and let them find out for themselves? I can ask that to the whole group. Are there points, because we've all dealt with kids on some level, is there a point that you decide this issue is, I'm not gonna argue, let them find out for themselves?
Oh, yeah, because you have to let them learn. I mean, nobody rides a bike by the first time by hopping on it, you know, there's practice and there's falls.
Okay.
And it's just part of the learning process. So sometimes if it's not a consequence that's going to seriously harm them, it might make them feel stupid, but not seriously physically harm them.
Yeah.
Then yeah, there's times I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna argue with you, go ahead, do it. Here's what I believe the consequence is gonna be, but if you're insisting, go ahead. You know, you wanna do this instead of doing that, that's your choice. But I think you're gonna find out that maybe it was the wrong choice.
So it sounds like your barometer there is more of a actual physical harm thing, meaning if they're going to get physically hurt, you could. But if not,
Yeah.
maybe it's best that they
Learn.
from themselves, and you're not arguing. You're just
Right.
Yeah.
It can be something as little as, I don't want to go to grandma's house this weekend, I want to do this.
Yep.
Well, then we go to grandma's house, we have a great time, we go out to a movie, and sorry, you missed out. You
Fair
know?
enough. Yeah. No harm done, but physical harm done. But on
Right.
the other hand, they get to miss something, and it's just,
Well, if they learn by themselves, if you keep telling them and telling them and telling them not to do it, and then they do it anyways, then they know that, well, mom or grandma was right.
Yeah.
They did it their way and
Yeah.
found out that the older person knew what they were talking about because they probably went through it themselves.
Yeah, that's true, we probably did.
well, yeah, that's it.
But I mean, I remember one classic time where my boys were just at each other's throat all day long, and I was tired of it. And I had plans to do something with them that night, so I piled them in the car.
Mhm.
Said, come on, let's go. I drove up to the arcade, and I said, this is where we would have went had you behaved. And then he turned around.
Oh, come on! There's a little bit of brilliance there. I gotta hats off to a good idea. Yeah, that's excellent. So, did it?
Well, I mean, it's just sometimes, you know, okay, go ahead, fight. Go ahead, argue.
Yep.
You know, I mean, please don't give me any more dentist bills, but
Yes.
go ahead, argue. I mean, you want to do this, fine. There will be a consequence, and they didn't want to listen, so I didn't argue with them. I mean, go ahead, just argue with each other. Argue over toys or TV or whatever, you know. Nobody's being killed. As long as you don't get violent about it, you can argue all you want, but I'm not going to live with you. You know, I'm not going to take you someplace fun.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Ooh, you can do that with other things.
Please Oh. Mary Lou!
No, this is a good,
Okay.
I took the girls shopping. You don't take two different children with way different styles
Uh-huh.
at the same time to the same store, so they just, oh, no, it's not fun. Robin put on a pair of pants.
Okay.
I went up to her and I went like this and they fell to the floor.
Mhm.
I said, go get a smaller pair. No, I don't want a smaller pair. I said, you want them to fall off.
Curious how this is gonna end up. Yeah, keep going.
And we argued and argued about it. I said, I'm not buying them.
Mhm.
And she got mad and I walked out of the store and left her right there.
Okay.
And she came out without the pants.
Well, seems that yeah, it's all right.
But you can walk away from them in certain situations where they figure they got you beat, Mom, you know?
Mhm.
But I'm not gonna buy a pair of pants for a kid that they don't fit.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah.
Well, sure you do. You're a seamstress, you do go home and take them in so they fit.
When they're not looking?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Now when they put
But
them on the
I'm
next time.
I just thought that was absolutely ridiculous that they had to wear their pants like that.
There was this thing on the internet. This guy was telling me, you know, you gotta wear a mask to do this, you gotta wear a mask to do that, you gotta wear a mask to do this. But maybe they should tell the kids to pull up their pants instead of having their hind end hanging out, but you still gotta cover your face. It should be a mask to cover their.
I don't want to see young men's boxers.
No, they're so much
And
more
when they-
comfortable, they're more comfortable that way. I don't like them when it's so tight and they're hurt, they dig into your skin, that's no fun. I like them, you want to be relaxed.
But you know where they're putting their belts? Under their cheeks.
Okay.
Well, that's too bad.
No kidding.
I understand.
But I have.
Dave's on the side of comfort here. I went through all of college in sweatpants. I cannot argue at this point.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with comfort. There's a difference between this much of a crack showing and your whole,
Yeah, that's a little bit too low.
yes.
That's too much comfort.
Oh, well, I don't see how that's
You
comfortable.
can do that at home.
Comfortable.
You can do that at home, but walking around downtown.
And if you're gonna do that, at least wear a shirt that.
Yeah, really. Or make sure you got underwear on.
Well, they wear the boxers, they don't wear the.
Well, some people do, some people don't.
How did we get off on this? How did we end up?
Arguing about
No, we didn't. Arguing about kids and clothes. Fair enough. Yes.
Arguing with customer service often is worth it.
That's not worth it.
From what perspective? Like with you calling customer service?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Tell me more, please. So this has been worth it. Yeah.
If you're nice about it, you can often work yourself up the food chain and get something credited or something fixed or changed or whatever you're calling to get done. But you got to be nice about it,
Fair enough.
but still be firm.
Okay. Do you think you've mastered the art of being kind but firm in these circumstances? Sorry.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I've had to call enough, telecommunications companies and, well, I know you're really busy, but, they were expecting this yesterday and, yeah, and you work your way up and if you're good to them, they're willing to do what they actually can do.
Otherwise, AT&T throws you into a perpetual hole.
I was going to say, we got to go.
Oh, yeah. But you got to get a hold of a human first.
Yeah, you gotta get a hold of a human, then they throw you in the perpetual hole.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Biblical question, was Moses right to argue with God? You remember the story? Why yes, why no? Was he right to argue with God? Normally, it's not a good idea.
Because God's promise is God's promise, and if God promised Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, that he would make their descendants as thick as the sea, and Moses is able to tell God, what about your promise? Then, yeah, I think he was.
That dovetails that, but you once said it's important to argue if you have new information, or at least a reminder.
Or at least a
And that-
reminder.
yeah. And that's perfect for that, yeah. 'Cause it's, remember when you did this? Yeah, excellent, that's a good one.
And it's a group of people who never had freedom before. And Moses left them alone.
What's that t-shirt says, in my own defense, I was left unsupervised?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, Sam, what do you think of this woman's argument with Jesus? I mean, his original point is, I came just for the children of Israel. I came for the Jews. And, he uses what some consider a fairly insulting metaphor. Don't take the food that you're supposed to give to the children, give it to the dogs. But even the dogs sit at the feet of the table and get food from there. I know I have 2 dogs myself who learn the fine art of what's going to fall to the floor.
Well,
Is
women go to great lengths to do things for their children.
Very much so.
And she wasn't fighting for herself near as much as she was for her daughter.
Yeah.
So, she's gonna take care of
What do you think Jesus thinks of her determination? You think it's a plus or a minus in Jesus' eyes in this situation? Do you remember the story?
I think it's definitely a plus.
Yeah.
Because he mentions her faith, that her belief was strong enough that you're the only one that can help my daughter.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
gonna be here, and I'm gonna keep on crying until you do.
Fair enough. There is something, and it happens in more than one story, that Jesus actually is very impressed with people who, for lack of a better word, won't take no for an answer, who are determined, who will do whatever it takes to heal a loved
Or
one.
who
to
just
feel
show
good.
faith.
Yeah, who show faith that no matter what, this is going to work. Yeah, and there's several stories that echo that. So I think in many ways he's simply impressed with how determined she is as well. Cool. All right. Final thoughts, arguments, good and bad. When is it good? When do we not bother? Some great examples in terms of, especially with kids sometimes, when you argue, when you don't. Some interesting techniques. I will remember the arcade drive-by. That'll stick in my mind.
We had planned going.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah,
You know,
drive right
I
up
had
there.
told them for a week. On Friday night
Yeah.
when I get paid, we're gonna go out and
Yeah.
do something fun. You know, so I mean, it fit in perfectly.
I'm gonna put Richard on the spot now because I like talking to Richard. He's fun to talk to. Richard, when is it more beneficial to argue, and when is it better just to not bother?
I think my opinion on that has changed somewhat, but I would think for me, if it was based upon a medical decision or something, I may tend to argue my point. Otherwise, now, you know, pretty much I just let things go now.
Yeah.
Well, we kinda, you know, we're in a strange situation. We've got people staying with us, you know, one who's quite a bit older.
Yeah.
And, you know, we try to do things for her good. Try to say, come on, let's get up, let's do this, let's do that, you know, just to get you moving. And at some point, you're just like, if that's what you wanna do.
Wow. Yeah. I can deeply relate to that. And it was with my mom. It was a particular issue also of battling depression. And so getting up, doing things was good for her and beneficial. But some days when she didn't want to, it was difficult for me to know how much to argue that you should get up and do things, and how much. In my personal case, I found that other people could do it more effectively than I could. There's a limit to how much my own mother would take advice from her son. So, but there was a lot. I personally found that when it came to making sure she got up and took medication and stuff, that nurses did a much better job, because I don't know, maybe it was just their role or something, but. And so it's about arguing. There was something about a lifetime with arguing with me as a kid that made her less willing to listen to my point of view as an adult. So.
That's a hard question to answer. It depends upon the situation.
Okay.
You know, whether you think it's worth arguing or you think it isn't worth arguing. Whether it's how important it is to you to express your point of what the situation is. Sometimes maybe just you're better off to be quiet and just let that person, you know, have their way and their point of view. And there's times where it's more important for you to express your point of view and argue more.
Yeah.
I'm just
Depends
kind of
upon the
curious.
situation,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, in general, Dave, look at the big picture. Which one are you more inclined to do? To argue your point, or to just kind of let it go?
German, I try to argue a little.
I was curious. Yes.
I don't know. I guess you want to be right, but then sometimes you aren't right. You know, you realize you were wrong.
This is one thing, this is a theme running through our Bible stories, is that everything that people are arguing about is incredibly important to them. For Moses, it is his people that are it, and for the woman, it is her daughter. And in other words, these are people who may not have argued as much, but the issue is so important Cassie has a wonderful expression. I believe she got it from her father. Do you want to die on that hill? Meaning, do you want to fight? It's a military term, but the idea is this little chunk of land so important in the big picture that you're willing to, risk your life on it? And for her, it becomes a metaphor for arguments and things. In other words, is this so important that you're willing to really stick your neck out in an argument? Good point, Dave. Excellent.
You do that with your kids too. Like, if there's little things that they want that you don't really approve of, you will let them get by there.
Well, you have to pick and choose your battles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because, so that it's not worth what the fight would cause.
Yeah.
So you just let it go.
That's a part of children, having children and growing up. Sometimes they have to learn on their own to realize what is right and what is wrong. So you can't, tell them, well, this is gonna happen. They gotta learn it on their own.
Yeah,
You gotta let them do it.
consequences, sometimes you have to learn that there are consequences to stuff.
I've got a quick, oh, no, you first, then I have something in the back of my mind that Richard brought. You first, please.
Well, I was just thinking about both these cases, and if you're talking about argumentation, then you're talking about an adversary, somebody who's against you.
Yeah.
And so in the first case where Moses is facing God, and God is so angry, what he's going to do is so horrible.
Mm-hmm.
You have to argue with your adversary and get them to look at what they're doing.
Okay.
And the other one where your adversary isn't listening to you and they're the only one who can help.
Mm.
You have to ask again. I mean, it's a different kind of an argument there, and more like a plea.
Yeah.
But you have to continue if that's the only person who can help you.
And you have a good point, Junia. It's not, the story with Jesus is not so much an argument as it is someone who is just continuing to plead. In other words, it's more of it's not so much of a you're wrong, I disagree. It's a please reconsider, or things like that. Nice. The other thing I was asking, Richard brought up quickly, medical decisions and things like that. We never talked about, we talked about arguing with kids, spouses, things like that. Do you find sometimes that you have to be firm and argue with medical care? And I was like, we went through quite a bit with that, talking about family situations and things like that. But what I find more often, what I find very often, I should say, and I hear this a lot from parishioners and stuff, is people needing to work extra hard to get themselves heard by the medical establishment. And so, I'd like to talk about that a little bit. In other words, when is it important to be argumentative with the world of medicine? Just put it nice and general.
That's one good thing about being an ex-nurse. When you say something, like when I went to Marshfield, because I transferred to Marshfield Clinic, and he goes, he said, well, you should have this done and you should have that done. I said, listen, I'm a retired nurse. I know what I need, I know what I want. You're not gonna do this, you're not gonna do that. I'm 66 years old, forget it. We're here to talk about my need.
Yeah.
And they don't. Ex-nurse, don't argue.
Oh, fair enough. So in this case, that was effective, though.
Yeah.
Richard, you did bring up a little. So when, and I just want to, you brought up a great point. I want to play with that a little bit. When do you feel you really have to kind of argue with the medical establishment to be heard?
Well, like in my situation right now, I mean, this situation with the pain, I mean, quite frankly, because of the number of surgeries I've had, I mean, I'm in a serious catch-22 because, A, I don't necessarily want to do another surgery, but I don't want to stay in this pain either.
Yeah.
So my getting my point across to them is that I definitely don't want to be in this pain, and I want to exhaust all options first,
Okay.
that could possibly work. I would want the the surgery, if necessary, to be my absolute last resort.
Okay.
Well, and it's like even medications, you know, he's been on some medications which he's had to argue to get off of to get something else because it just wasn't beneficial for him. He wasn't getting the effect they said they'd had.
Yeah.
You know, I know that especially happens in the mental health world with their antidepressants and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it can happen with like even this new diabetic medicine they're giving him now. I think it's probably the worst thing they've done to him in years, you know?
And did you have to argue to get off the medicine that had some horrible side effects from what I remember you telling me?
Yeah, did. Oh, just give it time. Give it time. I've given it, you know, I can't, like, for me, I was put on, I can't even think of it now. It was so popular. Everybody was on it. Drug of the day, antidepressant, Prozac or something like that. Anyway, for me, I was crawling to the bathroom and throwing up. Well, I wasn't going to go through 3-4 weeks of that to see if it's going to work.
Oh, give it time. Yeah, exactly. That's, yeah.
And the thing is, the medicines don't work the same on everybody. Their body, the chemical reaction is not always good.
And the more you hear about the medical field in general, what they do to get those insurance dollars, you know, give you all this unnecessary tests and this and that, the more critical I'm like becoming. Like if I talk to my doctor, no, I'm not willing to try that right now. Well, you should, blah, 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 blah. And no, not willing to do it right now.
So it sounds like and what I find very interesting is you talked about learning to argue when it's important. It sounds like, I mean, medical stuff tends to be paramount in its importance, and so it becomes maybe one of those places sort of like the woman who came to Jesus, where you have to be very argumentative to make it work. Any other? I mean, I'm kind of curious. Any other? Dave, have you ever had to kind of be assertive to get the medical world to hear you?
No, really, doctor I see, he's pretty, if he sees I have a problem with something, he'll put me on a medication, and he'll say, try this for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
If it doesn't help you, then I won't prescribe it anymore. So he does. He works with his patients, how they feel, what works for them and what doesn't work for certain medications. But I've had it already where I've had one doctor put me on a medication, and I went to the VA doctor, and that doctor says, you shouldn't be on that. Get off of that. So I mean, there's different opinions of different doctors, what they think.
I'm kind of curious then, how does it feel, speaking of arguments then, how does it feel when one medical professional disagrees with another medical professional about something that should happen to you? I'm just kind of curious. What is that like?
Well, I felt I wanted to go with the doctor that I told her, I said, well, this is working for me. I said, I want to get off it. And she so insisted that I should get off it because it was a bad drug that you could get really addicted to. It was hard to get off of it. I mean, I just looked at it, I wasn't taking that much of it. So I figured, well, if it helps me, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
No, that's like that episode I had Friday at dialysis. When I went to Marshfield, they wanted me to have a doctor up there for when I had my knee surgery. So she was going through my meds and she says, well, do you really need this? Do you really need that? She said, well, when do you see your doctor in Winona? And I said, oh, it's coming up. Well, then I had this episode at dialysis where I almost ended up in ER anyway. So they go, I think we better review your meds. I think you're taking a little too much of this, a little too much. Well, they had me on 4 blood pressure medicines.
Oh.
Well, when your blood pressure drops and you're having an outer body experience and you almost end up in ER, maybe they should change some of this.
I don't have a medical degree, but yeah, that does sound like something. Yeah. I like I said, thanks for bringing that. when I was imagining the conversation in my head, I never sort of pictured.
They got me 4 different kinds, and they're splitting them in half and that stuff. But I said, well, if my blood pressure is getting so low that I have hypoglycemic, or hypo, whatever that is.
Hypertension.
Yeah. Maybe I don't need all that. I mean, maybe my body's finally figuring out stuff.
No, they raised my blood pressure pill. And then I got like faint.
No, they,
And then I took my blood pressure and I told them what it was. Ooh,
well, they wouldn't even tell me what my blood pressure was. 'Cause they
oh,
said,
my upper number was in the double digits.
oh, because they said you'd have a stroke if we told you what it was, being that you're a nurse. And I go, well, is that telling you something? They go, well, yeah, when you got 6 nurses around you and they're, you know, and it's just like I was floating up in the air, seeing all this stuff going on, but I couldn't do nothing. I mean,
Wow.
I couldn't talk, I couldn't do nothing, and it was,
Was it
Scary.
frightening?
oh, it's really scary. I called Jane and I said that, she says, yeah, I have that every time I have one of my episodes. And I said, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I said, I don't ever want to go through that again. If I have to, I'm gonna stop taking all these damn medicines.
How long did it take to you to really recover? Because even
About
after,
45 minutes.
oh, but see, if I have low numbers, I feel it all day long, kinda.
Well, then
Yeah.
they even wrote Rusty a note saying that I had this episode and that being tired and being achy and all that stuff is, my fingernails even hurt.
Yeah.
And they said to go home, stay in bed the rest of the day and the whole night. Don't do anything. I said, well, you better write my husband a note because he's
can
gonna
watch
make,
it.
he's
He'll
gonna
make
make
you
you
work.
climb the ladder or something.
Oh, no, that wouldn't have been a bad thing for you to do.
Oh, I couldn't even get out of bed. I just hurt so bad. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
it's gonna
it's
take
just
a long time to recover, for your body to recover.
well, I'm still recovering. I'm still, I don't know. I follow what people say. Don't laugh.
I'm laughing because what you said about writing Rusty a note. It was Thanksgiving, and my granddaughter comes up and hands me a note from her mom. She made her mom write a note to say, "Dear Grandma, please understand Sienna doesn't like turkey."
Oh, I must have really worried him because he kept coming back. Are you okay? Are you okay? And he'd go like this. I'm fine, just leave me alone. So then the Brewers game was on. He even came back in the bedroom and watched TV because he kept checking to see if I was hungry and all that stuff.
It's good to check these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, make it real
So-
clean.
So let's see if I got this right. If I'm hearing you correctly, that by and large, the arguing it seems to resolve in almost every situation around how important is the outcome. And so in the 2 Bible stories where they're arguing with Jesus and God, the outcome is incredibly important. Therefore, it's worth the argument. And there are certain things we come to in life where we have to determine, I don't care how confrontative it is, how much I like or don't like that confrontation, this is important enough, I've got to do it. While other times it may not be as important and we have the luxury of letting it go. Have I sort of missed anything here? I'm hearing this theme over and over again in terms of our situations. Wow.
Yeah.
We almost never resolve an issue. This is, mark this on the calendar around here. That's excellent. Cool. All right. Last thoughts, issues, things with arguing. I like this. Good chat. All right. Well, gang, thank you so much. You've taught me a lot. I will take this to heart. We have a last song, and feel free to chat all you want afterwards about arguing and such. But no, I think it's kind of neat that at the end of the day, one thing that really is consistent with these Bible stories is that the issue that they're arguing out is critically important to the point where I agree this woman's not taking no for an answer. She's and that it's not so much an argument as it is a plea, but it's one of those pleas that is, yeah, so important that you're not taking no for an answer. And that's, and maybe sometimes those are the arguments that are the ones you have to have. Sometimes it is about what happens to your child. Sometimes it is about our own health. And a doctor needs to be aware that this is important and you're not going to just ignore it. That's excellent job. All right, gang. Our last song is As We Go. Please feel free to join with me on this one.